create mesh from a point cloud data. So if you have data that's coming from like a scanner or a bunch of points, you can create a mesh from that. You can also convert a solid surface model to a mesh. And then you have modeling tab where you can do Boolean operations like union, subtraction, intersection, splitting. And then you can also do offsetting, hulling, and also slicing. And in the intersect and modify tab, you can reduce the mesh like decimation. You can remesh it like refine the mesh, mesh smoothing, and also you can manipulate the mesh. You can also do some analysis in here. And then you also have these repair tab where you can do like stitch and close if you have a bunch of open faces or faces that are not joined together. You can do a stitch and close, automatic fixing of holes, self intersections, and any incorrectly oriented triangles and their normals. You can fix those. And you have all of these tools that are part of the mesh module. So now let's go ahead and load the parts. Now, can you let me know which of these files you'd like me to start loading first?
The dog mesh body is probably the first one you want to load.
Okay, so that would be the STL one right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you happen to know if this should be in inches or millimeters?
Millimeters.
Okay, so I'm going to pick open, and then I can set the units in here, and it's set to millimeters. I'll pick open.
And then can we set the document unit to inches though?
Okay, so I will have to scale it back to inches because STL is kind of typically unitless. It doesn't have any units tied to it when you have a mesh geometry. So we can switch the, once we import the file, we can switch it to inches. So if you go ahead and maximize this in here, let me also go ahead and go to the display tab in here. And I'm going to add the display tab and also hide the wires on the mesh, so it makes it easier to see it. Okay, now over here, you can notice that the extents, the length, width, and the height, what you're seeing here is in millimeters. If you want to switch the units to inches, you can right-click on units settings and then change it from millimeters to inches. And then when you select OK, you'll be asked, do you want to scale the model to inches, which means it'll convert it this 280 to whatever is equivalent in inches. If you select no, it'll end up being 280 inches versus scaling it down to inches.
Yep.
So I'm going to pick yes. And now if you take a look here, so now if you notice the model units in here, it's about 11.04 and then 14 and then 15. So that's the X, Y, and the Z extents. Okay. Yep. All right. Now, are there any additional geometries we need to import into it?
Yeah, so the two other files are identical files. One's a step file and one's an STL.
Okay.
Which one you'd rather work with?
If you have an STL, we can just take that in there, and because we don't have to convert from a surface or a solid to a mesh, so you can take this in, bring it in here, and I can say import it. And then STL.
It's probably in millimeters.
In millimeters, okay. So it's trying to import that in here. Okay, so it looks like it did convert it or scale it to inches, right? You see that?
Yep.
Okay, so now there's a couple of things we would have to do is, position these as needed, right? So this is basically the part that you're going to be milling is going to go and be placed on top of this fixture, right? Is that correct?
No, that frame there goes inside of the dog. So we're going to be like slicing the dog and putting grooves in the dog to fit the frame within it.
Okay. So how would you want to slice this model in here? And do you want me to move the actual part into a specific location before we start slicing it?
Yeah, that would probably be the best option. So if we can just center the frame kind of within the body of the dog to start off. And,
okay.
So the frame is kind of like upside down as it sits right now.
Okay. So right now I can select this in here. I can use the tools in Rhino and I can flip this over by 180.
How did you do that?
So if you select the object, there's what is called a gumball in Rhino, which is a graphical manipulation tool. So when you highlight any object, it'll display the gumball if you activate the gumball. So there's a toggle down in the bottom at the status bar. You see where it says Smart Track, and then right next to it says gumball, just before record history. So when you display or enable, toggle it on, any objects that you select will actually display the gumball for you. So I basically selected all of these, and then I rotated it over by 180. So you can choose if you're in the front plane or right side plane, you can just say you want to flip it to 180. So now this is how it originally came in, right? And then I just went into the front view. I just clicked on this here, and then I clicked on the rotation, and I want to rotate about the Z, and then I put in 180. So that basically flips that over for you. So now it's oriented the way you want it. Okay, so now you want to position the objects in line. So you can actually do a manual drag and drop if you wanted to do it that way. So you can select this in here, and you can put it right in the center, right? So you want to put this in the center of this, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so there's a couple of ways how you can do it. So one of the ways I could think about doing it is if you use our mill module, we can actually take, I'm going to go ahead and first hide one of these objects, or I can take them and place it in a different layer just to make it easier. So I'll put the frame in a different layer. Okay, and I'm going to hide this for now. All right. And then I'll go back into our mill module, and I'm going to take this, and then I'm going to go ahead and basically use what is called align, set world, set to part. I'm going to say center, and then at the bottom, right?
Yep.
Put that on the origin. So when you do this step, it actually moves it for you. Now you can do the same step in here for the frame also. So I'm going to just make this visible here, and I'm going to put this in the center as well. I can do the align, set world, set to part, lower Z, center. Okay, so I moved both of them to the center. So now when you take a look at both of these, you'll notice that they're probably right inside each other. So if I hide the mesh wires, I may not be able to see anything here, but I may be able to go into the ghosted mode, and we can actually see that if I hide the mesh wires, you can see the frame is inside the actual part itself. Do you see that in there? Okay, so I can also apply a different color in here just to make it easier to view it. So I'm going to make the frame in red color. Is it better to view it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you want to do some more additional adjustments in here, for example, you can actually change, you can use our different modules in here. So I use the mill module because it was the fastest way to just put it in the center. It computes the bounding box and places it right there. So now you can see that if you need to make any changes or modifications in here, we can still do that. Right? You see that right there? So if you need to move the frame, I can say select the objects in here, and I can even do some slight adjustments in here, move it, or I can take this object in here and move it out slightly. So I can keep this in the ghosted view so it's easier to see it. So now I can take this object and move it over to the right, or I can select these objects in here and move it over to the left. So to make sure that it's kind of fitting in fully, right?
Got it.
So is this okay, or do you need me to make any changes to it?
That's okay.
All right. Okay, so we'll leave it the way it is. So now if I go ahead and hit save to save the work in Rhino, it'll ask me where do I want to save it. I can actually just grab the same folder in here, and I can say save. I can put it in this folder, and then, yeah, so it's right there. And I can give it a name. I can specify a name for this file, and I'm going to save this out right here. Do you have any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So now, what would you like to do next? How would you like to process this? So do you want to go ahead and slice the part of the actual part itself in different levels?
Yeah. So we're just going to bisect it from the side of the dog. So like,
Let me give you a keyboard and mouse control so you could show me how you want it to be sliced, and I can certainly help you out here.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you keyboard and mouse control, and you should have control of it as well.
Okay.
Are you looking to purchase a product such as this? I believe you were emailing the support team.
Yeah, just down that way. That's fine. Just
Yeah.
all the way up.
Yeah, so if you just slice it towards the back of the frame, just all the way up.
Okay. All right. So what I can do here is go to one of the side views. Like, for example, I can go into the right side view, right?
Yep.
And I can actually specify how you want it to be sliced in here. You just want to slice this particular geometry, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you want to just do one slice, or do you want to have like a multiple different slices that you want to create?
Just one slice.
Okay. All right. So if you take a look at our modeling tab in the mesh module, we have what is called a command called split. So I'm actually going to go in here and go take a look at it from the different views. So when you do a slice, it'll be basically parallel to the plane that you're in. So if I go ahead and select a slice command, a split command in here, I can say it'll ask me to pick the objects. I can pick this here. When I right click, you'll notice that it's showing the splitting parallel to the construction plane. You see that right there, sir? You see the plane that shows up on the
Yep.
graphic screen? Okay, but that's not how we want to split it. So I'm going to cancel that. If I go into the right side view, make the front view active instead of the right view, I do a split. Now if I pick this object in here, you'll notice how it's splitting it right there, right?
Yep.
And over here, I can set it to set view to ghosted. So you can actually see it here. I can change it to ghosted right there. And then you can actually even pick a point in here where you want it to be split. So if you notice here, I'm going to move this plane right there. You see that?
Yep.
I can graphically move it. If you wanted to eyeball it, you can do that right there. Or you can even use a pick point, and you can even snap to like a vertex on the model.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the plane, active plane. And then that's where you want to split it. And there's an option to cap it or to not cap the results. If you say cap, it'll actually put a planar face on both sides to, cap it in there. So it'll basically put a plane on both sides to cap it. If you say do not cap and then hit split, it's actually just going to make it into two halves. And it'll use that as the splitting plane, and it'll split the objects that you selected. So in this particular step, I did not select the frame. I only selected the actual dog body here to split it, and it's going through the process of splitting it, and it'll use that plane for splitting it. So now you'll notice that once it's split, it'll create some additional meshes in here. So we'll have two more additional meshes in here, and you'll see the result of the split right here. So now, if you notice it, I'm going to put this on a different layer. I'm going to take this. You can see there's two halves of this model here now, and you can see there's one half right there, and I can change object layer, and then there's the other half right here. I can put it onto a separate layer if you wanted to.
Let me ask you this: is it possible to segment to split an object along a non-straight line that's not orthogonal to the work plane? Like say,
you can. So any active, the way the split works is it'll be parallel to any plane that you create. But if you want to split it in a different way, I can show you. Yes, you can certainly do it. So there is an option to do intersect and split as well. Or we could do a split in Rhino. Let me show you all the options in here, right? So in this particular case, what we did was we just basically did a split in here. You can see it's basically did a perfect split, right?
yes.
Okay, so this is the front and back. Now, let's go ahead and undo just what we did. And then I'm going to undo the split as well. And I'm basically just going back and undoing what we just did.
Okay.
So you can see it's undoing the split as well. So now it's back to where you started out with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's go ahead and
Well, as a workflow, mindset here, we would probably start by subtracting the frame from the part, right? And then splitting the dog different ways, right?
yes, we could do that. Yeah, so the frame first needs to be, if this as one entity, so I would select these and then make sure it is all merged together, right?
Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
like to make sure that you see if there's any gaps in here or they're not, if they're not combined, we would have to merge them. You can see these frames right in here. You may want to kind of slide them in a little bit. So there's a command called union here. I can select the objects to be union right there.
Okay.
Then I can right click on it. So the union will work if they're all closed objects. It'll union or boolean them together. If they are not closed geometries. Okay.
So while you figure that out, is it possible to like subtract one from the other and add a certain amount of say clearance? Let's say we wanted to make sure that that frame may be a little bit off, would still fit in the groove. Is it possible to minus it and just add a certain clearance amount?
Yeah, you can do a subtract of the two objects in here. So I could do, I can take, let me go into the mesh module here. So for example, I could say I want to do a subtract and pick the objects, this one. I want to pick this one, and then I wanted to subtract it with, and then I can pick the other object in here to subtract. You can do that. So I can select the, the frame from it to subtract it, right? I can pick that and then right click or press enter. So that'll do a Boolean difference between the two.
Okay.
So it's going to hollow that out for you, right? So it's going to try to do a difference of the, so the object I selected to subtract from was the dog body, and then the frame was the object I picked. So you can do a subtract of those two objects.
Yeah. It's still
now the tools that we have in the mesh module for Boolean operations are very powerful, and they're very, I would say, advanced and robust. It gives you a lot more capabilities as compared to what you just get with the native Rhino tools. Now, if you notice here, let me go into this. You'll notice that it did a subtract, and we can actually take a look at. I can see if I hide these two objects, I did not pick these two. I'm just going to hide those two for now. And now you can see it did a subtract with those right there, right?
A little bit difficult to see, but okay.
Yeah, you can see the inside over there. It subtracted. It removed that right there. You can see it inside, right, in the ghosted view. Or let me change the. Let me put this back into this layer here, so you'll probably see it. So I can say change object to layer. Okay, so now you can see that the frame was subtracted or hollowed out right there.
Right.
Right, it's now one piece of geometry in here. Right, now if you also want to do a subtract with the other objects, we could have done it. So we could have also subtracted these at the same time. So I can repeat the same step again. I could say I want to do a subtract, select the object in here, and I can go ahead and pick the other two objects. As I can pick this one and this one. So that'll also perform a subtract with the.
And practically speaking, we would have to import a frame that is, in that case, a full solid. Now there's going to be cores inside the tube of the frame.
Mm-hmm. Right? Absolutely. Yeah.
Close that up and also put some clearance on that, because you cannot do a subtraction plus some, right? Plus some three-dimensional clearance.
Yeah,
right?
you can model it in Rhino too. So that's the nice thing. You can create a solid model in Rhino and then convert it to a mesh and do a subtraction. So you can do mesh booleans in here.
Okay.
So it's in the process of doing it. Since it's a mesh which has over, like, you can see there's 2.9 million triangles in here, right? It's processing all of it in a, I would say, in a reasonable amount of time. So the mesh module, what we have, has robust tools for mesh unification, mesh creation, mesh subtraction, mesh intersection. So there's a nice set of powerful tools.
Good, good, good. All right, so that seems to be done.
Yep, it's working on it, and that's what you got right there, because it was not a hollow. It was a hollow kind of a tube kind of thing, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's what you get. Now, if you did not want it to be like hollowed out, we can modify it in here. It's fairly easy. So do you want me to show you how to do that?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to undo what I just did. So you can see it's undoing the subtract feature. And one of the ways you could do it here is I'm going to hide this model in here. Okay, so these are the two pieces of frames that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Rhino has some nice tools where you can extract some curves from it. I can do a command called mesh outline. Okay, and then I can select these, then press enter. So that creates those two outlines for you. Do you see those curves?
Yes.
I'm going to hide these two. I don't need to pick the inner ones. And I'm going to pick those two external ones, and I can say solid extrude straight, and I can extrude it on both sides since I got it on the mid plane right there. And I can snap to the vertex of this model here. So I can toggle off the grid snap. I can say I want to snap to a vertex, and I can just go right up to the edge right here.
Okay, cool.
So you don't have to go back into your CAD to remodel it. So now let me go ahead and select those meshes in here. I can say select mesh. And I'll just place them on a different layer. I'm not going to delete them. I can say change object to layer. So now what you have is basically just two solid geometries in here, right?
Yeah.
Now I could have I can convert these to a mesh. I can use the convert here in the RhinoCAM's mesh module, or I could even do a mesh conversion in native Rhino as well. So it depends on, there's two different ways how we can do it. So I can just say accept this over here. I can set the controls how refined or how coarse the mesh needs to be. And now it converted this to a mesh also. So there's a poly surface and then a mesh, right? So I'm going to take the extrusions and just hide it. So what we have is just the two meshes in here. Okay. Now let's make this model visible in here. I'm going to make this layer active. So now we'll go ahead and if I do a save, all of this work automatically gets saved. And now I'm going to do a difference of these two. So we will use the modeling tab in the mesh module. So we go into the browser in here in the modeling tab. So it's still working on saving the file since it's a fairly large mesh model, and I'm saving it in locally here. So I'm going to do a subtract, pick this object right in here, and I can say these are the two objects I wanted to subtract from, and then right click to enter. So it's going to go through the process of doing the difference of the two. So if you want the frame also to be a solid tube, the other one, you can also do a modeling in Rhino itself, or bring it in from your existing CAD system.
Okay. Now I saw that you converted a NURB to a mesh. Can you convert a mesh to a NURB?
You could. There are some tools available in Rhino that's called mesh to NURBs, and also you can do like a drape. But the process of converting to going from NURBs to mesh is a lot easier versus mesh to NURBs. Is a little bit more involved. So Rhino has some tools that can let you do it, but there are also some additional third-party plugins in Rhino which probably offers more control over it.
Yeah. Do you have any examples that we could look at? Or?
I can see what we have here and do a mesh to NURBs and see how that works. We can. One of the nice things with our CAM milling solution or machining solution is you can directly machine two meshes all the way up to index 5-axis, and for simultaneous 5-axis, we can use meshes as gouge check surfaces, and we can use we can have to model a drive surface. So you can see now there's your tube right there, right on the inside. You can see the difference right there.
Absolutely.
Okay. So is that what you were expecting here in terms of this model?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And you wanted to go ahead and do some slicing in here, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you want to slice it? Do you want to?
Well, slicing it, orthogonally in this case makes sense. But what I wanted to see is, if we wanted a line that was non-linear, a broken line to slice the model with, that didn't rely on planes necessarily, unless.
Okay, so how about we draw something up in here in Rhino? I'm just going to go into the ghosted view here.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can actually go ahead and create like a, free-form curve in Rhino, right? Let me say I want to take a free-form curve, and I'll just throw in a free-form curve in here. I'll disable all the snaps in here.
Very good.
Right?
Absolutely.
I can model something like this in here. And one of the things you could do in Rhino is you can also create a, you can do a intersect and split. You could do that. You can also do, so basically you can take this curve that you have in here, and I can, let me just, do a surface, extrude curve straight. I can extrude it right there. Okay.
Okay. Wow.
Now you could, one of the tools you have in Rhino is you can actually do a split between these two. You can do a mesh split, or you can use the intersection here. So if you use the mesh split command in Rhino, so you can see that the powerful combination of both the tools available in Rhino and RhinoCAM's mesh module, they complement each other.
Yeah.
So I can say to select the object to split, and I'm going to pick this as the object to split. And then you can pick the cutting objects. So it'll ask you to select the cutting objects, and I'm just going to pick this one here. And Rhino is now using the mesh split command to split it. So there's different ways how you can do it. I could have converted this surface, what I created, to mesh and use the split command, intersect and split command in in the mesh module. So there's different tools, different ways how we can accomplish it.
I see.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a mesh when you're using some of the Rhino tools. Like you can even split it with just a curve segment or curve geometry. So Rhino offers you a wide range of tools, and RhinoCAM's mesh module complements it by giving you more mesh tools, powerful Boolean tools, intersection, splitting, offsetting. So if you want to create like a wall thickness to it, you can even do an offset. So you can see that the splitting is in progress in Rhino. So, you can see that the time what it takes sometimes in Rhino tools are much longer than what it takes in our mesh module tool. So, our mesh module has exclusive mesh editing and mesh repairing tools. So we could have done a decimation of this mesh before we did a split, and that may have been faster in terms of the computation time. But you can see it's still going through the splitting process. Would you have any questions so far while it's performing the split operation?
No, I think we're good there.
Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to go over on this particular model?
I don't know. The only other thing I'd like to maybe see, if you could throw some sort of a full 5-axis toolpath on it. Just to see what that looks like.
But you'd have to convert the dog into a nerve, right? Is that something they
Can we drive the 5-axis with like a cylinder?
Okay, one moment. You can actually have to model a cylinder inside and then do it. So you actually have to model something in here in Rhino, and then you should be able to do it. So you can see that the mesh split, for some reason in Rhino, it didn't work out well here. So let's go ahead and convert this to a NURBS.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have now 2 meshes in here, right? So now I can use a intersect and split. Select the objects, the mesh to split right here. And now I'm going to pick this cutting mesh right here. So you can see that the tools that you get in the mesh module have more options for you. So it needs to be I had to give it a thickness here to split it. So I can probably make it add a wall thickness to it, and the splitting will work. And I need to also make sure that it's going all the way through. So that's something we need to make sure, and then we can split it even with the curve, or we can do a splitting on it. Now, if you want to machine this, right? So let's go ahead and do let's decimate it in here. So we'll just reduce this down by like 70.
Oh, so it still didn't split?
No, it didn't. I canceled out the split right there. So I'm going to reduce this, and I'll take a look at the split command in here. Just give me a moment. So I may have to give it a thickness in here. And the two models have to be watertight in order for me to perform the split. So let's make sure that they are watertight so I can perform the split on it. So basically what I'm doing is decimating the mesh a little bit. So it'll, just reducing the number of triangles to it. Okay, so let's make sure that there aren't any holes or self-intersections on this mesh in here.
Okay.
Let's go into repair. We can run a diagnostic check in here to check for any holes or self-intersections. Okay, it says this one looks good. And let's look at this one here. Okay, you can see that, okay, this one is it's an open one. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and do a split in here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a split. Okay, this is the object I want to split, and this is the object I wanted it's cutting it with. Okay, so typically it should split it into two. I will have to look into it to see why this is not splitting in here. So I may have to check if I need to give it a wall thickness in here. So let me do that. Select this in here, and I can do an offset surface. And I can make it a solid, and I can give it a distance of, let's say, just in a quarter inch, right? And I'll make it, or I can say both sides, so let's do 100 thousandths and say yes on both sides. So you can see I'm giving it a wall thickness right there.
Okay.
Right? So now I'll pick this and do what I'm going to do is convert this to a mesh. So that's converted to a mesh in here. And let's make sure that there aren't any open edges on it. Okay. Now let's run the split command. We can find we can do an intersect and split, or we can even do a subtract. So let's do an intersect and split. This is the object, and this is the one right here. Or the other option is we can make two copies of this model in here and do a subtract, one on each side, so get the result as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so looks like it's for some reason the intersect and split is it's failing on this model in here. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just make a copy of this in here. Just making a copy of one of these models. Using Control C for copy, Control V for paste. And I'll hide one of these models. And let me do a subtract. Select the object, this one right here, with this. So it should eliminate the Okay, so I'll have to go back and check why the splitting is failing on this model here. I'll have to go back and check, and then I can get back with you.
Okay.
All right, let me look into that. So there's several different ways how we can split it here, but I'll check why this one seems to be, failing here. So one of the other things we can also do is maybe split with a curve in here. We can check that too. Okay, so I want to split, do a. Yeah, you can even be able to pick a curve to split it. So you can select the actual mesh body. Okay, so that gave us two meshes right here. You see that, sir?
Yeah, that's
okay. So splitting with a curve
seems to work.
now I can actually, yeah, you can see the difference right there.
Can you cap them when you do that, or you have to go back and mesh and cap them?
Yeah, so this command, what we did was a split in Rhino, what we did. Okay. So Rhino doesn't have a cap command with the split. So we can do a capping with the, typically what we do is if you do a split with the, with a plane with our mesh module, there's an option to cap it, but Rhino doesn't have a cap feature. But then we can go ahead and create a plane and then merge them together and then cap it. So there'll be a few additional steps that you'd have to do.
But so if you were to import this into Rhino, into the mesh side, and just ask it to fix it, how would it?
Yeah. So here, what we can do is we can go to here, repair, and there's a command called manual hole fix, and I can select this and say detect holes. It'll identify the holes. This is basically showing each of these holes in here, right? You can see there's a hole right there, and this is the one right here, right?
Yeah.
And there's different ways how we can do it, like a fan, or you can do a smooth. And if you say preview it, it'll show you how we can fix it with the mesh module. So here, what I chose is different ways how you can fix the holes in here. So if you just say in a minimum area and then say preview the fix, and you can apply the fix for it. You can say apply the fix. It'll just cap that. Say okay, I need to select the objects in here. Okay, so I can say smooth preview the fix. So it'll show you the different ways how you can fix those holes right there.
Yeah.
And you can apply those fixes to it. So you basically select them, and then you can say what type of fix you want to do, like a planar or a fan, or you can do a smooth. You can say
can you apply any of them and just to show the result?
Yeah, I'll do that right now. So basically, you go in here, you can do a manual hole fix, or you can even do an auto fix. So if you do an auto fix, it'll automatically select, identify holes, self intersections, and just do a fix for it. So that's a quick way to fix it. So in the case of auto fix, it doesn't do specific type of fixing, but if you pick the auto fix, it'll automatically just go and cap all of them together for you. You see it right there? So that's just capping it with an auto fix command. But then if you want it to be smooth and stuff, you can even model a surface, trim it with that, and then you can fix it. So I can show you one of the other ways how you can do it. So for example, let's take this curve in here. Let me undo what I just did. Okay, so I'm going to take these two. I'll make a copy of this. I'm going to select this one too. And I'm going to say drag it out by a certain distance right here. Okay, so it's actually making a copy of in addition to the curve. You see that right there? So I have two sets of curves. Now I'm going to do a surface, do an extrude curve straight. So I'll just extrude the curves right there. Okay. And what I can do here is I can do a trim, and this is my cutting object right here. Okay, so I can create an outline in here and trim it with this surface. So there's a trimming tool that's available for you. And then now you can basically do a split in here. So you can basically split this with the mesh, and then you can cap it as well. So that's one of the ways how we can do it. Or the other option is you can use the manual hole fix. You select the objects that you wanted to fix in here. So I can pick this object right in here, and you can say detect the holes. So it'll identify each of the 3 holes for you, and then you can apply a fix for it. Okay, so I need to select this object and then apply the fix to it. So there's different types of fixes you can do, like a fix with just a planar surface in here, or you can fix it with these are the different options.
Would it be able to recognize that it came from a line, like it's a 2.5 dimensional cut?
It would not. So you would basically just apply a fix for it. So the best way I could think of is create a surface and then split the surface with this mesh, and then you can join them together, like and do like a stitch and close. That might be a best way for you to do it.
Understood.
So that will probably a most efficient way to fix it.
Okay.
Would that help?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you want to do, Rhino has a command called mesh to NURBS. So they have a mesh to NURBS command in here, and you can say, select polygon meshes to convert to NURBS. So I can, for example, I can pick this here, and has over, it says has over 200,000 faces. You might run out of memory and crash. Do you want to save? So Rhino is telling that there's too many number of triangles on it. So you may want to decimate it further before you do that, right? So that's what Rhino has a limit on how many triangles it can perform.